Good evening. I'm Kathy Van Ness from the Golden Door, and I'm so excited to be here with Victoria Skurnick. And she and I talked a few times on the phone, and I thought, what a wonderful time to have a conversation about publishing. I mean, how many in here would like to write a book? I'd like to write a book. We all have something to say, don't we? But the world of publishing today is certainly not like the world of publishing was yesterday. So Victoria is a literary agent at Levine Greenberg, and as editor-in-chief, she relished the opportunity to devour every kind of book, from the finest literary fiction to Yiddish for dogs. Ann Taylor, John Le Carre, Amy Tan, Tom Wolfe, some of them, I mean, we've had some wonderful authors here throughout the year.
Well, I didn't work with them. They were not my clients,
yeah,
please.
They were great. You read them.
I just really put the range of things I like.
Stephen King, Roddy Doyle, it goes on, Julia Child, just wonderful books, as we all have, and certainly in my life, books have become a wonderful place to pause and read and learn things. Elizabeth Phillips was just few of the authors that made the deaf and blind to anyone around her when she's reading. In other words, reading puts us into a place that we can only be for that moment and we're nowhere else. They represent authors in a broad range of genres and categories, authors that have been in New York Times bestsellers, Dagger Awards, Edgar nominees, Penn. But what's happened to the world of publishing? Because it certainly has changed. We've interviewed Mona Simpson. I've interviewed Gail Sheehy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to interview Gail Sheehy again on a mountaintop. I'm actually kind of excited about that. It's going to be amazing. Everyone wants to publish a book.
Everyone. I've never met a person who didn't say, boy, could I write a great book.
Exactly.
And they can't.
Every person's story is better than everybody else's story. So
well, I do think, we just had that conversation at the table. I really believe that everybody does have a story. I think no matter whom you're talking to, you know, a random doctor's office or dentist's office, and you get in conversation with the man or woman next to you, people have stories. The ability to write them is quite separate from that. And then the ability to sell that story is really separate.
So what does it take to publish a book today? The hardest question of the night will be that.
You know, unfortunately, publishing is at its worst period. And I've been working in publishing for more than 40 years, and I have never seen it like this. I was telling Kathy when we sat down just last week, I happened to have dinner with 3 good friends. And as I said to Kathy, because I'm old, my friends all have big jobs. So I was with the publishers of, well, I won't say the houses because they wouldn't want it filmed. But each of them said the same thing, which I said, how are you? And each of them said, we can't sell a book. It is a terrible, terrible time, especially for fiction that isn't brand name fiction. And years ago, when a novel didn't work, it might sell 4,000 or 5,000 copies. Now it can sell 80 copies or 120 copies.
Wow.
You know, you have a James Patterson who sells millions of books. And if you're a brand name, and once you make a name for yourself, you can write pretty lousy books and still sell for a good long time. But if you're new, one of the things it does take is something original, something that hasn't been done before. And that's true both for literary work and commercial work.
Well, you know, it's sort of interesting. With data so easily available in today's world, the internet, it's just instantly available. They're almost books. I mean, you get up in the morning, I don't know how many do it, but you go to your phones or tablets and you read the news, and you can read the news all over the world in seconds. You don't need a book. Yeah. But with data so easily available in terms of reading material, are books becoming more instantly available? Is it really the book is the blog?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that books are instantly available is actually a great thing. The fact that people aren't reading them and instead are watching Netflix and Amazon Prime, or, I mean, honestly, even people my age, not just young people, all people do is look at their phones and answer texts and email. And I'm just as guilty as the next person. Let me not, you know, but it's so rampant now. And even I was telling this story, I think I said it this afternoon. I come from a big extended family of huge readers, and they don't read anymore. None of my cousins read. They're talking about the Amazon Prime series they're watching. They're talking about, Bosch. They're talking about Netflix. And that's what they're talking about. That's what they're doing 12, 15 hours a day, because many of them have retired. And that's all they talk about.
Well, let's kind of jump right to that dark horse in the room, Amazon. They just are opening
Absolutely.
brick and mortar bookstores.
Yep,
I
they
don't
are.
know if anybody's been in them, but I took the time to visit, and they were busy selling books. What does that say about the publishing industry? Or does it?
It's a very fascinating phenomenon.
Right? He sort of
And-
took it away, and he's sort of giving it
on
back.
the one hand, Amazon does almost all the book business now. Amazon sells something like 60% of all books sold are sold by Amazon. And the number only gets higher and higher. There used to be several book chains. There used to be Borders. And by the way, Borders was great for making a new novel. They were really the people who would take a chance on a novelist. Well, there is no Borders anymore. Barnes & Noble is trying very hard to remain viable, and I sure hope they do. But Amazon, they not only, listen, they do a lot of great stuff. I use Amazon all the time. You get a fabulous discount. You get the book the next day. They're a phenomenal business, but they own the whole thing. The only rules are their rules. So I'm happy there's an Amazon because most of my authors' books are sold via Amazon. And that's a wonderful thing. But they're both publishers and sellers. And I sell to them. I'm delighted to sell to Lake Union or Thomas and Mercer. I'm really happy to do it. But they're category killers. In the old days, there would be, little stores would be driven out by a larger store that had it very cheaply, and it was called category killers. And Amazon, unfortunately, is a category killer. I mean, now they're in food.
But there's another nuance here, I think, that Amazon has that a publisher couldn't have, almost something that we have here, which I'll relate it later. Amazon knows about their customers. Oh, yeah. They know us intimately. So our relationship with books or toilet paper or whatever it is with Amazon is quite personal. They take care of us in every way they can by making our life simpler. A publisher does not have that relationship with their reader. They're selling. Their relationship is with the author.
It was a wonderful
unlike the
thing.
reader.
When I was at Book of the Month Club for 19 years before I became an agent. I spent a very long time at Book of the Month. That's where I knew our mutual friend Colleen. And one of the great things about a book club was that we had that relationship with our customers. And I could hand sell a book, and did every 3.5 weeks, because we actually had 18 cycles a year, even though it was called Book of the Month. And if I had a pet project that I loved, even if it was totally unknown, I could get some number of people to buy it on my word. And that's a fabulous, fabulous thing. Amazon, they really have that power to, first of all, they're online. It doesn't cost anything. They can do a fabulous marketing job.
But I remember how many people, I was a member of the book club. I maybe was 22. Yeah. I thought I was the smartest girl in the block. Yeah. Because every month a book was selected for me and sent to my home, and it was a way for me to learn things that I could probably never learn. Mm-hmm. So in that case, Book of the Month Club had a relationship with me because I actually didn't know the books. Yeah. And that sort of went away. Well, interestingly, like almost maybe too soon. Like if the Book of the Month Club had been a little more visionary.
That's right.
They would have owned that relationship.
You have no idea how true that is.
Right. They had me.
They had you, and they had
a whole bunch
millions of others.
And they just let it sort of
really did.
They did.
And when Jeff Bezos came in to talk to people that I worked for after he left, their comment was, he doesn't even have a business plan. Well, Turns out he didn't need one, did he?
He actually had one. He was just inventing it in the car.
Yeah.
Take over the world.
Yeah, but the frustrating part for bookstores is they're great at what they do. They are. They're really great at it. And what the world is going to look like 25 years from now, I don't know. That, to me, is the interesting question. Because there are a lot of bookstores that are doing a great job. And I mean, they have to do a great job, otherwise they don't stay in business. And it may be that there will be a lot of small independent booksellers popping up because, every reaction, everything that happens, thesis, antithesis, it's Mayday. So I think, a little Marxism won't hurt us.
Well, you'd also have to say that it was also the challenge, much like the music business and much like the movie business, the book business really didn't stop long. In my opinion, it's going to be a question, I promise. Yeah. They were giant stores of books. And you can remember going to those Rissolis and those fine bookstores and touching all the books and wishing you could buy these books. Yeah. That's an experience. Yeah. And you would go in there and open those big ones, and maybe you just walk out with the little book that you could actually afford because you really couldn't get that $200 book. So even the big booksellers forgot their relationship was with the customer in an experiential way, not a selling way.
Well, they know.
And can they bring it back?
I don't
know. Is it too late? Like
that's
the CDs?
The question.
And because Amazon now owns the experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting question.
Isn't it an interesting dilemma?
And who's going to curate all those self-published books?
Exactly.
I mean, there are
Someone's
now
gonna do
50 million books. Everybody is a publisher.
Well, and if you were to think of something that was experiential about the relationship, it was, you're right, the curation.
Yeah.
Oh, they just started buying everybody's book and selling
it. And that
it.
was fun. I can tell you, as a book club editor, it was very exciting to discover a book and think. I was recommending earlier today The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, which is just the most wonderful memoir I think I've ever read. And she's just fantastic. And I remember the sense of, I didn't write it, I read it and fell in love with it and hand sold it to millions of people. And I actually talked about, I used to do book reviews on TV from time to time. And it was the most wonderful feeling that you could bring this gift to people, of something wonderful. It really was a very special feeling.
It was.
And the book clubs don't really do that to the extent that they even are alive anymore.
And when was the last time when you went to someone's home for dinner, you bring a book? It used to be like.
Well, for me, I do it all the time.
And you know what? I just got one from a friend in New York, and I thought it was very touching. They went and found a book, and it was about flaneurs, something it's about traveling and women and traveling. It was a perfect book for me to read. But then I thought about when was the last time I bought a book to a guest home, which is something I would have done. I actually have one book that went out of print, and I give it every time someone gets pregnant. But you don't do it anymore. It's actually
a wonderful idea.
It is. It's
especially if you're visiting people who aren't allowed to drink. You can't do the bottle of wine. I mean, it really is a wonderful idea.
Well, there's another interesting challenge, I think, coming up that is not us as what was the baby boomers, perhaps, and even Gen Y, but the millennials have grown up on tablets.
Oh, totally.
They do not buy books. I mean, they might buy the perfect book or a big, rock star book or something like that, but they really don't buy books to read them. They read lots of books, but they're reading them on tablets.
They're reading them on their phones.
On their phones.
They're not even reading them on tablets. They're reading them on their phones.
Do you see it changing? Do you see them coming back to buying a book, or do you see it's going to get even harder?
I'm going to give you a hopeful word. When people started reading ebooks, and especially with Kindles and the Nook, hardcover and paperback publishers were hysterical. Like, no one will ever buy a book again. Well, it turns out many, many people buy ebooks and read on a Kindle or an iPad, but actually it's leveled off. And it turns out people do like reading. Some number of people like to read electronically, and some number of people like to read on paper. So, who knows? And I'm sure there are millennials who do read.
And I love that where you're going, but let's go back to Amazon and Facebook maybe, and the millennials, which you and I just briefly spoke about. This is a really interesting worry, I feel, between the algorithms and the pivoting you into a certain plane that this is who you are. means that you will not be exposed to things that would be outside where they're tracking you. You will always only see exactly what you're, quote, precluded to see. And therefore, in the world of millennials, unlike us, where we can read anything, they might not be able to see it. Or think about the younger generation, even younger than, is that going to hurt their ability to be broad?
You know, I have to say, I don't delineate it that way in my head, you know, between age groups or even among age groups, you know, Gen Y does this, Gen X does this, millennials do this, baby boomers. I just don't. I think there are millions of different people who do different things. I mean, on the other hand, it's what we see politically, of course. If you're a watcher of Fox News, you will never know what MSNBC is saying. And if you're a watcher of MSNBC, you will never know what, I mean, we really are, what you're talking about politically is absolutely a reality now. And yes,
It's a bit of
you
a
know,
challenge.
certainly that kind of analysis, I don't know.
Because this is the millennials who kind of still have us and the Ys to sort of be guiding them along, but under the millennials comes we see the world completely changing between fast deliveries and movement and automation and intelligence, that we have to figure how do we keep these beautiful things, like saying the perfect gift to take to someone's house is a book.
Yeah, I mean, that actually.
Like, we know that we're going to be in flying cars, we know we're going to be able to do all these things, and this is beyond all of us. But maybe we could go back and start, I mean, people have said read, but maybe it's even different. Maybe it's not just about reading. Bring the book so you can see the color, touch the papers, understand the letters.
Yeah, but I'm more hopeful than that. I really am. You know, books have been around a long time, and there are all kinds of people, and I think a lot of the kids I know are like the smartest, most curious people in the world. I just don't see the world in those categories. I really, really don't.
Millennials versus baby boomers?
Yeah.
They're very different shoppers.
I mean, I see it in the Me Too movement in a way, and I'm believe me, I'm happy to do a generalization, and I do it all the time. You know, about the sort of militancy of women younger than I am. Versus, you know, I mean, we all hate men. I don't mean that, Camera, at all. But I do see that even in my office, that you know, I think it's a fabulous movement. But there's a stridency about one group and a more, gee, that's life among another. But I just don't know. I think we live in a world of millions and millions of people, some of them curious, some of them not curious, some of them readers, some of them not readers. Books, I don't see them disappearing, and I don't see breadth of knowledge disappearing. And I will also say about change, you know, gosh, you know, 100 years ago, I mean, I flew here last night.
Yeah.
You know, 100 years ago, we couldn't have done that.
Exactly.
Automation came. Everything in the world changes all the time.
All that, which is a good thing.
You
So
know?
in your wonderful literary history, what was the most favorite book you worked on?
Oh God, you know, I can't do one.
Well, how about two?
Well, I can say in terms, oh God, you're killing me here.
These are my easy ones.
Among the books that I have represented.
Yes.
I mean, among the books I chose for Book of the Month Club, certainly The Glass Castle was one, The Joy Luck Club was one.
That was a great book.
Among the books I represent, certainly Turn of Mind by Alice LaPlante is just wonderful and remarkable and different. Susan Nelia McNeil's Mr. Churchill's Secretary, and she has a whole, you know, she has a number of books about a World War II spy in London, and they're absolutely wonderful. Harry Dolan is a suspense writer I represent. I think he is the genius of the world. Everyone here should read Harry Dolan. He is just, Bad Things Happen, Very Bad Men. The newest book is The Man in the Crooked Hat. I have wonderful clients.
That's so great.
I mean, I have people who are just terrific, but it's like, who is your favorite child? I can tell you, and I'm really happy to do this. My favorite book this year is a book I don't represent. And I really want you all to read it. I love this book. It's called This Could Hurt by a writer named Gillian Medoff, Medoff. And it is about a human resources department. And I cannot tell you how much I love this book.
Really?
But I get very excited about books.
I do too, by the way. I have way too many and I read them all the time.
Yeah.
So are there, you know how sometimes there's trends in movies? You know, it's action movies or it's, there's always these trends. Are there trends in books?
Oh,
there must be. So what's the trend?
Well, vampires are over.
Thank goodness.
Sorry, vampires. You're over.
We're happy.
Girl, anything with girl in the title.
Yeah.
It's getting less, but you know, the unreliable narrator, and that's thanks to our LGR client, Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl and is the best of any writer doing. I mean, she's just, I'm sure you've all read her because she's fabulous. But the unreliable narrator is a very big thing. Ruth Ware has now come on the bestseller list. That's the trend right now, is psychological suspense, unreliable narrator.
Interesting, you're getting it.
And if
here
I
at
knew what the
Golden
trend was
Door.
going to be a year from now, I would be much more successful.
That's okay. You know, every night, I promise to make this quick because it's this kind of warm and cozy night. Every time we have a guest at Golden Door, and I'm so glad you're with us because I couldn't wait just to learn something about publishing and just reading and getting ready to speak to you. These conversations sort of came up about how do we really get a big perspective about books when they are a bit downtrending. But if you were to give our guests a golden nugget at the end of all of our interviews, at every single time, you'll see my last question is, could you please leave a golden nugget for our guests to take home tonight? And we've had some incredible ones. What would be your golden nugget for our guests?
I don't know that you call this a golden nugget, but I, as a child, and I bet a lot of you are the same way, I did nothing but read. You know, we would go to the library 2 or 3 times a week. My brother and I would take out 4 books, which was the most we could take out. We'd go home and read them, and then the next day we'd go back to the library. That was really what we did. And as an adult, you know, we all work and families, and it's a hard world out there. It's stressful. There's a lot to do. We're driving around or we're getting on the subway where I live. And even I, working in this business, sometimes forget. One Sunday, my friend Sally had sent me the newest Louise Penny novel. I don't know Louise Penny. I sure as hell don't represent her, although I would love to. I spent a Sunday doing nothing but reading the latest Louise Penny. I wouldn't have answered the phone if, you know, the Secretary of State had called me. The golden nugget is it's easy to forget how completely delicious the experience of being lost in a great book is. It is the most fun in the world. And that's my nugget.